A pregnant woman was bound to a cross. The king commanded her to be burned alive. As the flames rose high, the crowd seemed to accept the execution as rightful justice. Then, piercing cries rang out from the sky. The woman gave birth right in the midst of the fire. The onlookers stood frozen in shock at the sight of a newborn cradled in the blaze. Suddenly, a werewolf named Herman appeared behind the king. He slipped past the guards, not to strike the king, but to leap from a windowsill straight into the inferno. He snatched the baby and escaped through the stunned crowd on a warhorse. Herman, a Mackay knight bearing the title Ancestral Wolf, had arrived too late to save his wife, the woman on the cross, but he succeeded in rescuing his son. The execution stemmed from the king's grave illness. His advisor Mendoza convinced him that a witch's curse was responsible. Believing this, the king launched a nationwide witch hunt. It allowed not only official captures, but also civilian vigilante killings. Countless women, including Herman's wife, perished under this decree, which also gave criminals cover to commit atrocities in the name of witch hunting. The empire itself began to crumble under the weight of the purges. In what felt like a single breath, 17 years passed. The child born in flames, Leon, had grown into a striking young man. Through his bloodline and a gift from his mother, he became the mighty Mackay knight Garo. Just like his father, one day, imperial pursuers tracked Leon down. Mendoza, determined to erase every future threat, had sent hunters after Herman and his son for 17 long years. The attackers set the place ablaze to kill Leon. Yet Leon, now the Golden Knight, showed no fear of fire and swiftly overpowered their leader. To everyone's surprise, the leader was not human but a man-eating horror. Defeating horror, however, was precisely the duty of a Mackay knight. Leon slammed the creature to ground, first terrifying the ordinary soldiers, then prepared for the killing strike. He sharpened his blade and charged, slashing the horror over and over until it was unrecognizable, finally destroying it. Herman arrived too late. Facing Leon's questions about the horror, Herman at last revealed the truth behind Mendoza's witch hunt. He was a Mackay knight known as Ancestral Wolf, yet he had failed to protect his wife and could only watch her burn. After her death, he changed completely, spending his days lost in pleasure districts. When his son came to bring him home, Herman instead asked for money. Of course, all Leon received was a large stone. Once his son left, Herman returned to his indulgent ways. But the woman with him that night was actually a man-eating horror who lured lustful men to devour them as a midnight meal. Herman had already noticed. As a seasoned pleasure seeker, his rule was to enjoy first and worry about payment later. The woman, believing she had seduced him completely, prepared to swallow him whole. Having had his fill, Herman killed the horror with one clean strike, proving he remained one of the strongest Mackay knights. Returning home, he saw the aftermath of the battle his son had just won. The Empire had found their hideout again, a place Herman had deliberately arranged to test whether his son could stand alone. He was not disappointed. Now he was ready to return with Leon to the city where his wife had met her tragic end. After traveling for 81 days, they reached the outskirts. Herman sold the horses, saying he wanted to avoid attention and needed money for living expenses. Yet he soon found a beautiful tour guide. In a moment of distraction, Herman's face was covered in lipstick marks, and he sent his son Leon to explore alone. Leon, grumbling, went by himself to the site of his mother's death. Lost in thought, a strange man nearby assumed Leon was interested in witch executions and mentioned that many women had recently been taken to a nearby tower, likely a place for witch trials. At that moment, a woman named Emma was imprisoned in the tower, captured by Mendoza's men for using healing spells. She was told that anyone proven to be a witch would be executed. The priest gave her one night to decide whether to stubbornly deny or confess under torture. Seeing Emma's calm demeanor, he realized the situation was not simple. After leaving, the priest himself transformed into a horror monster. This man, who appeared psychopathic, was truly a horror. He planned to use the tools on the wall to discover the witch's weakest point and devour her. The girl stayed calm. After the man finished speaking his twisted thoughts, she shifted her posture and gently shook the bells on her thigh, which seemed to control him. This was Emma's way of testing whether the man was a horror. Once exposed, he revealed his true monstrous form. At that instant, Herman burst in, and Leon attacked the horror with his sword. They broke through the wall together. Herman tried to act chivalrous toward Emma, but she found him annoying and chased the horror with a teleportation spell. The horror, knowing it was outnumbered, transformed again and prepared to fight both. Emma and Leon exchanged a smile in midair. Sensing Leon was weaker, the horror targeted him. Leon was hurled down to the bridge, landing right at the site where his mother had been executed. Memories of his mother flooded back, and he transformed into the Golden Knight, though clearly not at full strength. The horror took advantage, launching a sneak attack. Leon countered with fiery blasts along the chains, repelling the enemy but also injuring his ally. Seeing the desperate situation, Herman transformed into the shadow-cutting knight to restrain his frenzied son. As the horror tried to escape, Emma pursued it with her whip, striking it into oblivion. No wonder she had remained so composed when facing the horror earlier. Herman stabbed Leon's transformation device with his sword, helping Leon regain control and deactivate the Golden Knight armor. Leon's inheritance from his mother had become unstable after the witch hunt 17 years ago, which had cracked the motto ring that controlled his power. Without the motto ring, Leon often lost control when transforming into the Golden Knight. At that time, Herman had sought the help of Gale, an alchemist, to repair the ring. 17 years later, Gale informed Herman that the ring was ready to be retrieved from his lab. But just before the final ceremony, Gale's apprentice, seduced by evil, tried to steal the motto ring for himself. He turned against his revered master and planned to flee with the ring, but unexpectedly encountered Emma. He had once been a knight of justice, but became a slave to demons due to his obsession with power that was not his. He not only killed his master, but also stole the Golden Knight's exclusive motto ring. Yet he failed to realize that without the bloodline power, he could not unleash the motto ring's true potential, making his actions pointless. He then tried to blame the murder of his master on Emma, who had happened to pass by, but Herman ruthlessly exposed his lies. Knowing he could not justify himself, he used demonic power to transform into a horror monster. Seeing the transformation, Leon wanted to test a gap in strength between himself and the powerful horror. Quickly morphing into the Golden Knight, he charged at the horror, who countered with long-range attacks to block Leon's approach. Agilely, Leon closed in, but the horror shifted forms for close combat and used phantom fire to trap him in memories, nearly causing him to lose control. Fortunately, at the critical moment, Emma intervened, using her silk threads to shatter the horror's vital shield. Then, Leon charged the horror, leaped behind it, and stabbed it with his sword, reclaiming his own motto ring, Zaruba. Zaruba pulled Leon into another space to form a pact. Zaruba would grant Leon power, and in return, Leon was to sacrifice his life on the night of a full moon. Once made, the pact could not be revoked. Leon finally gained the full power of the Golden Knight and completely destroyed the horror before him. Emma then handled everything related to the alchemist Gale. Curious, Leon wondered how Emma could find him in such a hidden place. Emma did not explain, but told him to learn to observe. Herman simply smiled and remained silent. After Emma coolly departed, Leon was still confused. Herman realized his son was still naive and hadn't noticed he had been tracked. It seemed he still had much to learn. He was destined to be the next king, but now he was a fugitive of the Empire. This happened because, at his coming-of-age ceremony at 20, his mother gifted him the amulet she had worn since childhood. Unknown to them, it was actually a badge symbolizing the lineage of the Golden Knight, which was recognized by a sharp-eyed maid. She reported this to Minister Mendoza, who harbored hatred for the Golden Knights and could not accept someone with the Golden Knight lineage becoming king. He planned to disqualify Alfonso from kingship. The next day, Mendoza brought his loyalists and stormed the royal palace, where he found Alfonso's mother administering medicine to the king. He halted the queen's actions, accusing her of poisoning the king's medicine. While the queen tried to explain, Mendoza had her forcibly taken away. By the time Alfonso learned of this, the queen was already locked in a prison cart en route to trial. Alfonso rode after the cart to seek the truth, but the queen urged him to flee. Seeing the pursuers behind him and wanting to find a way to rescue his mother, he had no choice but to escape the capital. Clearly, Mendoza was not planning to let him go and sent his men to capture Alfonso. Unaware, Alfonso was discovered by the enemy. But unexpectedly, these soldiers turned out to be demons. With his knightly lineage unawakened, He was no match for the demons and was nearly killed. At that moment, a sword-wielding man saved him, swiftly defeating the demons. This man was the legendary hero of the Empire, Stronghold Knight. He then led Alfonso to a dilapidated knight's chapel. The man introduced himself as Raphael and began explaining how the Makai Knights and mages had protected the country from the horrors. However, as the number of horrors decreased, people forgot their contributions and even persecuted them based on rumors. The Makai Knights and mages could not retaliate against ordinary people, and most of the country's defenders were killed under strange lies, all orchestrated by Mendoza. Raphael then shared the story of Leon's mother, revealing she was actually Alfonso's aunt. The family of the Golden Knights had a rule to prevent their lineage from vanishing. Each generation would have at least 2 children, one raised as a knight or mage, and the other raised as an ordinary person by others. If nothing happened to the main family's child, the other's identity would remain hidden. Thus, although they were sisters, they might never know each other. The only ones aware of this secret were Stronghold Knight and Alfonso and Leon's grandfather. Now aware of the power within him, Alfonso felt somewhat inflated, but Raphael quickly made him see reality. Currently, he lacked the strength to fight monsters and could not even wield his designated sword. Alfonso would need to undergo training to unleash the true power of the Golden Knight. A pregnant woman was about to be burned alive, but she gave birth to her son just before dying, entrusting him with her hopes for revenge. At that moment, her husband arrived too late to save her. He could only flee with their son. 17 years have passed, and the baby has grown into the Golden Knight Garo. Leon, following his father, travels around fighting the malevolent horrors. One day, they arrived at a remote village, shocked by its eerie atmosphere before even entering. A beautiful woman by the well-relaxed Herman, but he was nearly terrified when he turned around. The village chief soon approached. Seeing strangers, the villagers seemed tense. Herman mentioned he had heard of disappearances in the area and wanted to investigate. The chief immediately denied this, claiming theirs was a peaceful village, and insisted Herman leave that day. It was clear the village was hiding something. On their way out in the evening, they saw a blond boy, Iros, being bullied by other children. Herman intervened, and the older children, recognizing outsiders, urged them to leave, calling it a cursed village. For Iros' safety, Herman decided to take him home. Upon meeting the boy's mother, Herman was instantly charmed, especially learning her husband had died. He inquired about the village's happenings, but the woman did not answer, seducing Herman with sweet nothings. She then invited Herman and his son to stay at her house. At dinner time, Herman brought up the disappearances in the village again, but before any conclusion could be reached, the door was kicked open. Parents demanding their children burst in, revealing that the village's children had disappeared that evening. Someone had seen Iros leading them away, leading to suspicion that the woman was seeking revenge. The village chief ordered the woman to be taken away, and in the chaos, Iros escaped. Herman, suspecting something was off with Iros, decided to stay and see how things unfolded. During the woman's interrogation by the chief, a fire suddenly broke out at the chief's house, causing a commotion as everyone rushed to put out. Herman took this opportunity to sneak in and attempt to rescue the woman. Just as they were about to escape, they found the chief blocking the door, but he did not hinder them, and instead told Herman to take the woman away. After they left, the chief instructed the villagers to prepare for a ritual. Meanwhile, Leon followed the fleeing Iros to a dilapidated hut deep in the forest, filled with various puppets, resembling a bizarre ritual site. As Leon was still processing the scene, Iros suddenly appeared behind him. Leon told Iros to come back with him, saying his mother had been rescued. But upon returning home, Herman tested Iros, suspecting him to be a horror monster. After the test showed no reaction, Herman was puzzled about where he might have gone wrong. Leon then realized that horrors don't necessarily have to look human, and recalled the puppet Iros was always holding. Sure enough, when they opened the door, Iros was gone. As Leon rushed after him, Herman and the woman were surrounded by villagers. It turned out the so-called ritual was actually a guise for bandits to kill villagers who opposed their control. When Leon found Iros and demanded the puppet transformed into a horror monster and attacked Leon. Fortunately, this horror wasn't very strong, and Leon managed to drive it off with a few moves. Although Leon wanted to pursue it, Iroh stopped him. It turned out that Iroh's father had been killed by the villagers, and he wanted to use the puppet for revenge. Meanwhile, Herman learned the same from the woman. As the villagers were about to storm in, the horrors suddenly appeared and began to eat the villagers, who were disguised as bandits. Just as the chief, the mastermind, was about to be eaten, Leon arrived. This time, he did not hold back and quickly killed the horror. Even knowing that these people were villains, as the Golden Knight, he could not allow the horror to continue devouring humans. Although he wished he could punish the other villains himself as Mackay Knights, their code prevents them from harming humans. Finally returning to the city where his mother had passed away, Leon felt a mix of emotions. Herman immediately declared his intention to gather intelligence and also to visit an old lover. Without looking back, Leon grabbed his wallet and left. At a market, Leon was spellbound by a girl. The aunt selling vegetables nearby thought Leon was interested in the girl and insisted on helping him speak for marriage. Fortunately, Emma appeared and rescued Leon from the situation. Seeing Leon so shy about expressing love, Emma realized he was just a young man and advised him to learn to hide his emotions before leaving. Meanwhile, Herman was drinking with a swordsmith who had just learned of his son's death in the king's army. The swordsmith should have been grieving, but being around his son's sword, which was possessed by a demon, he was controlled by the evil spirit and lost his sense of sorrow. Herman, drinking with him, noticed nothing unusual until the swordsmith complained of a headache and left. Rather than going home, the swordsmith asked two patrolling soldiers about his son's whereabouts. Unsatisfied with their response, he suddenly transformed into a horror and attacked them. The next day, when Herman went to see the swordsmith again, he unexpectedly ran into Leon. It turned out that the swordsmith's apprentice had become friends with Leon by chance. The father and son visited the swordsmith's home, where the swordsmith again complained of a headache. Leon and Herman, still upset from a morning argument, quarreled. Herman said it would be better not to have a son like Leon, which unintentionally hurt the swordsmith, who then used his headache as an excuse to send them away. On their way out, the swordsmith's apprentice caught up with them and shared that his master had changed drastically after his brother was killed, as if he had become a different person. Learning this, Leon and Herman decided to help the apprentice investigate what had happened to the swordsmith. In the swordsmith's room where he stored his swords, Herman detected traces of demonic presence in the swords. By then, the master had already turned into a demon and was desperately seeking information about his son's whereabouts. When they found the demon-transformed swordsmith, Herman decided to take action personally, out of respect for his drinking buddy. He transformed into the shadow-cutting knight and lured the demon to a less crowded area to attack. Herman proved more adept at handling horrors than Leon, easily dispatching the demon with his combination technique and saying farewell to a friend he had only known for a day. Herman then explained that people turn into horrors due to inner fractures, which give demons an opportunity to take hold. At that moment, Emma arrived and informed Herman that there seemed to be corruption in the selection of kingdom knights. Those chosen were being controlled by demons. One could only imagine what would happen if all the soldiers were transformed into demons, and what the state of the nation would become. This was Leon's first major defeat since becoming a Mackay Knight. Betrayed by the innkeeper, Leon was surrounded by the Empire's minions. He barely escaped and managed to defeat the obstructing horrors. Suddenly, a man confronted Leon. To Leon's surprise, this man was also a Mackay Knight, but his evil aura sent shivers down Leon's spine. Dodging the man's attack, Leon transformed into the Golden Knight and charged his foe, slashing in midair. However, the enemy mocked Leon's weak attack. Knowing he was outmatched, Leon tried to retreat, but was quickly pursued and knocked to the ground. An invisible shockwave then expelled Leon and broke his knightly form. Just as the enemy was about to finish Leon, Emma used a rope to pull him away. Nevertheless, the enemy wasn't willing to let them escape easily, cutting Emma's rope with a long-range attack and then targeting her. Injured, Emma had no choice but to flee. When Leon awoke, he found himself tied up in a clinic. A person resembling a doctor said he needed to drain bad blood from Leon. Suddenly, a group burst in, defeated the so-called doctor, and claimed they were werewolves. Mysteriously, Leon also transformed into a werewolf, his body changing in a violent temper, driving him to kill everyone around him. Disbelieving what he had done, Leon fled into the darkness. When he woke up again, Leon found himself in a strange house where everyone called him Louis. He also discovered that he had amnesia. An old man told him that he had been attacked by werewolves, which caused his memory loss. Before Leon could ask more questions, everyone's attention was drawn outside by a clown. Following the crowd, Leon ended up at a church where a man patted some children on the head, selecting them for a journey to Rugaraza. The other children had to return home disappointed. A nun then stopped a girl, who excitedly told her that Louis had returned. The nun's shocked expression indicated that the situation was complicated. By evening, Leon encountered the nun again and stopped her to inquire about his identity. Seeing his amnesia, the nun told Leon that she had saved his life and that he had fled to this place from abroad. Unable to argue due to his memory loss, Leon returned home to find that the old man and his sister were not there. Driven by intense curiosity, he opened a locked cabinet and found only a sword inside. When he gripped the sword, all his lost memories returned. He realized the old man had deceived him. The man was a Mado Ring sorcerer who had used a potion to erase Leon's memory. When confronted, the old man explained that it was all for the girl. Her parents had been killed 5 years earlier, falsely accused of being werewolves. Her only remaining relative, her brother Louis, had run away from home. To make the girl believe Louis would come to fetch her, the old man had Leon temporarily assume Louis's identity. On the other hand, his sister had already met the real Louis. It turned out that Louis had been disguising himself as a clown to stay close to his sister. He then took her to a monastery. Originally, when he was sent to Rugaraza after being selected, it was not for a good cause, but because he was trafficked by human traffickers. Louis suffered various torments on the trafficker's ship, and eventually, the evil thoughts turned him into a horror monster. He didn't want other children to be deceived like him. His return wasn't only to seek revenge on the monastery, but also to rescue the trafficked children. Thus, he disguised himself as a clown, a figure beloved by children, to lead them away. Just as he was about to leave, Leon caught up with him. Although he could understand Louis, once he turned into a horror monster, Leon could not just stand by. Eventually, Leon transformed into the Golden Knight and quickly subdued the horror monster with just a few strikes. Even though he had eliminated the demon, Leon was not happy. The situation with Louis made him start to question whether he was truly upholding justice when defeating horror monsters. The strongest Makai Knights fell victim to a honey trap. The enemies were not horror monsters, preventing Herman from attacking them. He was lured into a warehouse by a woman and completely fell for her after just one kiss. Unable to resist the temptation, his true nature was fully exposed. At that moment, the woman's accomplice kicked in the door and his wallet was stolen. They didn't plan to let Herman go, forcing him to flee naked. Because he was unclothed, patrolling soldiers mistook him for a pervert. Fortunately, Emma appeared just in time and helped him evade the pursuing soldiers. Emma was actually there to inform him that Leon had been attacked by the Dark Knight. Hearing the name Bernardo, Herman's expression changed, hinting at a history between them. Emma urged Herman to check on Leon, but Herman refused, stating that if Leon couldn't recognize his own issues, he didn't deserve to be the Golden Knight. After saying this, he left and went to confront a priest at the temple, asking if Bernardo had truly fallen. The confirmation brought back memories. Herman and Bernardo had once been close as brothers, and both had loved Leon's mother. Herman won her heart, and Bernardo, rather than being jealous, blessed their union. One day, due to a witch hunt, they were chased by Imperial soldiers. Herman and Anna, who was pregnant, were knocked off their horse. Bernardo insisted Herman escape with Anna, while he stayed behind to block the soldiers. Due to the rule that Makai Knights cannot attack ordinary people, Bernardo lured the soldiers to capture him instead. Surrounded, not wanting to die, his only choice was to fight back. This led to his transformation into the Dark Knight. At night, Herman returned to the warehouse where he had been during the day, hoping to retrieve his clothes and weapons. However, he was ambushed by someone. Upon closer look, it was the same woman from earlier. She hugged him again. Herman didn't understand what she wanted, but then noticed she was covered in bruises. She told him that after he left in the morning, one of her companions had suddenly turned into a monster. At that moment, the individual appeared at the warehouse door and transformed into a horror monster. Now Herman had a reason to fight it. He easily defeated the monster and used the opportunity to scare the woman, warning her that she too could turn into such a creature if she wasn't exorcised. After a sleepless night, Herman happily left the warehouse at dawn, but again forgot to put on his clothes. He wanted to check on his son. Leon walked past him, but Herman offered no advice. Like most parents, he silently watched his child stumble and grow. Indeed, everyone's life requires a phase of growing up alone. From a prince to a prisoner, his mother thrown into the dungeon, and his father's fate uncertain. The whole nation was nearly under Mendoza's control. Alfonso wanted to defeat Mendoza, and dealing with the horror monsters was an inevitable part of this. He needed the power to fight them, so he sought Raphael to teach him the art of slaying these demons. Raphael decided to first show him the state of the nation, taking him to the domain of Count Romari, their first stop. In Alfonso's memory, this place was lush and fertile. However, upon arrival, it seemed more like a hell on earth. He wanted to understand what had happened here, but the villagers fled at the sight of him, mistaking him for the Count's minion. Raphael explained that everything was due to Count Romari turning into a horror monster. He then split the gates of the Count's mansion with a single strike and motioned for Alfonso to carefully follow him into the depths of the house. A shadow followed them stealthily, attempting to ambush Alfonso, but Raphael intercepted it. In front of them stood a figure resembling a soldier. Raphael pulled out a detector, and as the soldier's eyes slowly turned red, confirming he was a horror monster, the soldier dropped his disguise that battle was imminent. Raphael, with his superior swordsmanship, easily overpowered the horror monster. Seeing that he was losing, the monster attacked Alfonso, hoping to distract Raphael. Alfonso was locked in a secret chamber where he saw musicians playing, a frightened mother and child, and a horror monster slowly approaching them. To protect them, Alfonso attacked the horror monster, but caused hardly any damage. He had no choice but to flee with the mother and child while the musician was swallowed by the monster. Alfonso could not tolerate the monster, but his attacks barely affected it. At that moment, Raphael arrived, transformed into the Stronghold Knight, and faced the multi-legged monster. He drew a magical circle on the ground and executed a fiery slash, incinerating the monster in flames. This incident made Alfonso realize his own insignificance once again, and he resolved to undergo intensive training with Raphael. They went to a natural training ground where Alfonso began the most rigorous training, and Raphael did not hold back. Over time, Alfonso's abilities improved significantly, even managing to exchange a few blows with Raphael. However, Raphael felt the progress was too slow as he had limited time left. One day, he went to the temple to ask the priest where the most ferocious horror monsters were located. He wanted to put Alfonso through a life-and-death trial to quickly become a Makai Knight. The priest, without much discussion, directed him to fight the Charm of Obahico, where the most vicious horror monsters resided and where no knight had returned alive. Satisfied with the information, Raphael left the temple and Leon arrived shortly after. It was his first time at the temple, and like Raphael, he was looking for a place to hone his combat skills. Hearing his request, the priest sent Leon to Obahico as well. Back in reality, Raphael told Alfonso that he had chosen a final trial for him. If he could pass it, he would become a Makai Knight. Although unsure of the trial's difficulty, Alfonso was confident he could complete it. After bidding farewell to his master, Alfonso arrived at Obahico, but was immediately hassled by a swindler. Encountering a rogue for the first time left the downcast prince helpless until Leon, who was passing by, helped him. This was how the two met and became friends. Although aware of each other's identities, they tacitly did not disclose their purpose for being there. Late at night, Leon sneaked out to search for the monster and unexpectedly ran into Alfonso, who was also on a hunt for the monster. They nearly came to blows and questioned each other's reasons for being out so late, each telling a lie. However, they ended up moving in the same direction and realized that they were both there to eliminate the monster. Suddenly, a strange wind blew through the valley. They ran towards the source of the wind and indeed encountered the monster Kyrame. Kyrame immediately attacked them, but with just one strike, both of them were overwhelmed. Leon told Alfonso to retreat, because ordinary blades could not harm horror monsters. However, Alfonso stated that this was his trial, and even if it killed him, he would not retreat. Seeing Alfonso's resolve, Leon decided to support him. He rushed forward and dealt with Kyrame's two skeletal guards. Seizing the opportunity, Alfonso jumped onto the monster's head and shattered the stone tablet on its body. He thought this would destroy the monster, but instead, it unleashed the monster's seal. A devastating power erupted from the monster's mouth, even blasting a huge hole in the mountaintop. Leon told Alfonso he could no longer intervene, as this was beyond a normal person's capability. Leon then transformed into the Golden Knight and charged at the monster. However, the monster's attack prevented Leon from getting close, and even pinned him against the wall. Alfonso tried to help, but was knocked away by the monster with a single blow. Just as all seemed lost, Raphael appeared. He reminded Alfonso not to forsake the knight's honor, and transformed into the Stronghold Knight, rushing towards the monster. He skillfully dodged the monster's attacks and landed a critical strike to save Leon. But Raphael no longer had the strength to continue fighting. He was impaled by the monster, and, in his final moments, reverted to his human form, and threw his knightly sword at Alfonso's feet, asking him to carry on his will. Initially hesitant, Alfonso didn't want his master's death to be in vain. He transformed into a knight and charged forward. With a final blow, he struck the core of Kyrame, completely destroying the monster. In doing so, he lost his most respected master. From that day on, Alfonso would continue to fight, inheriting the honor of the Stronghold Knight. You would never guess why Mendoza harbors such deep hatred for Makai knights and sorcerers. It turns out he was once a disciple of the Golden Knight, gifted with extraordinary talents. However, he did not use his abilities for good, instead experimenting on humans to enhance the power of his artifacts. This led to his expulsion from the Order. His master also left with a curse that would never fade, ensuring he could never gain the respect of ordinary people as a Mado Ring sorcerer again. This curse would persist through generations. After being cast out, Mendoza used his cunning to gain favor with the royal family. He then manipulated horrors to help the Empire win wars, earning the trust of the Emperor, who even arranged a marriage for him. He thought his life was improving, but when his son was born bearing the curse, it reminded him of his master's words, making him feel as though his master wanted to end his lineage. Mendoza directed his hatred towards all Makai knights and sorcerers, and initiated a series of witch hunts. Upon discovering that the queen was a descendant of the Golden Knight, he targeted the royal family as well, causing countless tragedies. Mendoza knew that Alfonso, having inherited the Stronghold Knight, would definitely seek revenge with the Garo team. He had Bernardo prepare for their arrival. Meanwhile, Alfonso was indeed planning to infiltrate the palace. Knowing about a secret passage within and with everyone's support, he led Garo and his father into the palace's underground. Below the palace was the royal tomb, where Mendoza had long been conducting his horrific experiments. The ceiling of the tomb was covered with numerous eggs, each containing a horror monster. Their arrival awakened these creatures. Herman struggled to fend them off, but fortunately, Alfonso found an exit. They managed to lock the horrors inside, but upon emerging from underground, Bernardo was already waiting for them. Herman told Alfonso and Leon to go ahead while he dealt with Bernardo. Indeed, Bernardo let the two leave, focusing solely on Herman. He even killed his own men when they tried to help, and the two began a melee. Overwhelmed by darkness, Bernardo was no match for Herman, so he transformed, signaling he was serious about fighting. However, Herman remained human and sat down, curious about what Bernardo had gone through after he left. Recalling the past, Bernardo was nearly killed by soldiers and tried to reason with them, but they wouldn't listen. Unwilling to surrender, he resisted and initially wanted to eliminate them. But recalling Anna's words, his kindness overcame his hatred. Still, the soldiers wouldn't spare him. Desperate, he ultimately abandoned his principles and struck down the soldiers. Seeing ordinary people killed as witches, his beliefs shattered. He questioned why he should protect such people. At that moment, Mendoza appeared, healed Bernardo's wounds, and successfully recruited him into his alliance. Hearing this story, Herman became furious. Unsure how to face Bernardo now, realizing his own actions had led to Bernardo's current state. Yet Bernardo's fall compelled him to confront him. This was the ultimate battle between Makai Knights, Shadow Cutting Knight versus Dark Knight. Originally close friends, they now fought to the death, but out of respect, both gave their all. When regular moves failed, Dark Knight merged with his steed to launch a powerful attack. Shadow Cutting Knight countered with his Tornado Dragon Slash. The clash engulfed them both, forcing them out of their knight forms. Herman expressed his desire to stop fighting, but Bernardo mocked him as a pitiful man. They continued to fight hand to hand. Herman managed to capture him, but was unexpectedly stabbed by a weapon hidden in Bernardo's prosthetic limb. Herman retaliated with a boomerang, hitting Bernardo. As life and death blurred, Bernardo seemed to regain his conscience, suddenly caring about Herman and asking about Anna. Herman lied kindly to him. In the end, Bernardo asked his old friend to help find a successor. Before Herman could respond, Bernardo turned to ashes. On the other side, Leon and Alfonso had found the arch-villain Mendoza. Eager to defeat him, Leon couldn't break the barrier Mendoza had created. Mendoza then showed them a new magical device he had made, planning to summon the most powerful horror monster from a magic mirror. Suddenly, two giant hands emerged from the mirror. Mendoza declared that this horror, along with the Millennium Red Moon, would completely destroy the country. To stop him, both transformed into their Makai Knights forms. Leon broke the barrier and charged at Mendoza, while Alfonso grappled with the horror. Mendoza attempted a verbal assault to break Leon's resolve. Angered, Leon began to lose his sanity and was immobilized by Mendoza. With a light touch on Leon's head, Mendoza made him recall his mother's death and manipulated his memories. Unable to cope, the curse within Leon erupted, turning him into a berserk Garo. He unleashed endless rage, even altering his armored form, and escaped through a large hole in the ceiling. His body, like a cannon, continuously shot flames, rapidly turning the entire citadel into a boundless inferno. Seeing his people suffer, Alfonso couldn't accept it. Garo, once considered the guardian deity of the nation, was now destroying it. He believed Leon was unworthy of using Garo. Herman arrived and told Alfonso that destroying the emblem on Leon's armor would suffice. Watching his out-of-control son, Herman was filled with regret. Leon continued to lose control. Alfonso transformed again and charged into the flames, but was no match for the berserk Garo and was flung aside by Leon. Just as Leon was about to destroy the city, Emma arrived in time. She temporarily restrained Leon with ice threads, but he quickly melted the ice. Alfonso seized a moment to attack, skillfully hitting the emblem on Leon's waist. Using a knight's kick, Alfonso sent Leon flying to the moon, which reverted him from his berserk state. As Leon fell and was about to crash, Emma used her threads to cut down a tower, lessening the impact of the fall, allowing Herman to catch his son. Realizing his son was alive, he knew Alfonso had held back. Meanwhile, Mendoza had completed his real experiment. To combat the monster, Alfonso picked up Leon's sword and transformed into the Golden Knight. As a blood relative, he too could become Garo. Alfonso charged the monster, using his shield to block its attacks, but was caught by its tail and nearly dragged into the demon realm. Just when it seemed Alfonso wouldn't return, he forcefully opened a portal back from the demon realm. Now, only Alfonso and Mendoza were left to confront each other in an unresolved feud. As they charged at each other, the monster suddenly emerged and devoured Mendoza. Alfonso then swiftly killed the powerful horror monster with a single strike. This battle proved to everyone that Alfonso was the rightful heir to become Garo.